Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing GTA 5 with frame generation, because they just introduced it into the game. Well, a few days ago, but I was busy testing Battlefield 6 beta. But anyway, we're playing it here with the RTX 5060 Ti. This is a 50 series GPU, so we can go up to 4 times frame generation, or multi-frame generation. Also, this is the Palit Infinity 3 version of the card. I'm running it with the latest Nvidia drivers. You can see all of its specs here in Tech Power GPU Z, and I'm pairing it with a Ryzen 7 9800X 3D and 32 GB of RAM. Overkill specs, but you'll achieve the same FPS with something like a Ryzen 5 7600. This is just so we don't bottleneck the GPU. Let's go over the settings first, and we're starting it here with the 1440p resolution. I think I'm gonna stick to the 1440p res in this video, and we're using maximum settings. So I enabled all of the ray tracing features, including that second ray traced global illumination bounce. Oh boy, I actually managed to say that the first time. And the rest of the settings are maxed out as well. We're using DLAA at the moment. Frame generation is turned off, and this is it. The only thing that I disabled was the motion blur here because I don't like it. Everything else is completely maxed out. And let's see how it runs with these settings here. I made it rain a little bit, so we got some beautiful puddles everywhere, and this beautiful car is super shiny. Look at that. And yeah, the visuals are looking gorgeous as usual for GTA 5. It's an older title, yes, but now we got that ray tracing going on, and we can see it with this car really well. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it changes the game a little bit, not gonna lie, and it's also extremely demanding. You can see that we are actually dropping into the 50s sometimes, unfortunately, with this GPU. Please don't bump into me, thank you very much. But yeah, most of the time it will achieve like 60 to 70 frames per second driving around the city. Obviously, in intensive vegetation areas, it will drop a little bit from that, but it's a solid baseline FPS at least to enable frame generation on top of. And I'm really curious to see like the input lag of frame gen in this video, as well as the quality of 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times. So also, speaking of latency, I'm gonna bring up the latency monitoring here from the Nvidia app, and we can see it right there. It says the 1% lows and the latency. It says latency 0 milliseconds. That's because in full screen mode, this game doesn't accurately report the latency. So for us to accurately report it, we need to set it to windowed borderless. And whenever you enable frame generation, you can't really do full screen either. So only windowed borderless will be available. But here we go, windowed borderless. It says 0 milliseconds still. What is going on? Well, actually setting it to windowed borderless didn't work, but enabling reflex did work this time around, but it didn't previously. Anyway, now we got the latency back up and running, and we can see our native latency results here. So it's around like 40 to 50 milliseconds. I can definitely tell it's not super snappy because we're dropping into the 50s, you know, but it's still playable for GTA 5, a single-player title or multiplayer, but it's third person. Hello, Jack, by the way. How's it going? It's third person, so it works quite well even if you drop sometimes into the 50s. I don't like to drop into the 50s though, so I might actually try a little bit of DLSS quality to bump those averages up, because right here, for example, we're getting down into the 40s. That's not very good. But yeah, those are the latency results without any frame generation in place. So driving around the city, it goes down to like 35 milliseconds, but it averages around like 50 most of the time, 40 to 50 milliseconds there. Let's stop it right there, and let's finally enable that frame generator. So we got DLSS and FSR3 frame generation. I'm gonna use DLSS 2 times first. Let's enable that. Again, only borderless full screen is now available to us, and it also enables reflex with boost by default. Alright, so I'm just gonna leave it right there. And where did the latency monitoring go? There we go. It's back up here. And in terms of visuals, I can say that this is not the best frame generation implementation in a game, guys. Right away, like I tried the 4 times already for a second before I started recording this, and I was really not impressed with the 4 times implementation, but I thought, yeah, maybe it's because we are having low FPS baseline, you know, 50 to 60. Over here it would be 70 though, so no problems there. But with 2 times, I can also see quite a bit of blurriness, especially on the sides of the car, the reflections especially. It's really blurry for some reason. It doesn't look bad. I'm using a 1440p native monitor here today at 24 inches, by the way, so it has high PPI for a 1440p panel, and even then I can definitely see a bit of noise here and there, a little bit of weirdness around the top of the car as well, and the mirrors. Yeah, guys, I mean, I really thought it was going to be better than this. Come on, Rockstar, don't give us frame generation like this in GTA 6, please. I want frame gen to be like, for example, in Battlefield 6 beta, which I have been testing a lot. In that game, yeah, it introduces more latency, it's terrible for a multiplayer shooter, but it is really flawless. You can't really see much artifacting, if any at all, even with 4 times frame generation. But the baseline FPS with that game are also usually higher than what we were seeing here, 50 to 60 once again. But hey, right now we're getting 100 frames per second. If you can get away with this little bit of artifacting, if it doesn't bother you at all, it's still going to be a pretty solid experience here, guys. Latency results are really good, actually, for what it is. Remember that we've got the reflex set to on plus boost, and that usually drops the GPU utilization by a little bit, but that doesn't seem to be the case here in this title, so just leave it right there. It will give you the lowest latency results, of course. And just driving around here, we're getting like 40-ish down into 30-ish milliseconds. That is not bad at all, guys. I'm not really feeling the disadvantage of the input lag here in this title, given it's GTA and a third-person game, you know. Well, you can also go on first-person, but the reaction times aren't really as important in a game like this as they are in, say, Counter-Strike or that Battlefield beta that I talked to you about. Yeah, this is definitely passable with input lags of around 40 milliseconds, or even higher than that, honestly. And now we are having 60 plus 100% of the time, actually 100 plus FPS most of the time, so it's a much smoother experience visually. I just wish the implementation of frame gen was a little bit better, honestly. But hey, I'm not really complaining too much. If you don't look at the edges of the car, for example, and if you just look far into the distance, you can't really notice any artifacting there, because there's basically none. But hey guys, the question is this better than just playing with 50 to 70 FPS all of the time? I think it is. I think even though we have that shortcoming coming from the artifacting with frame gen, I feel like this is a little bit better of an experience. Again, the input lag is almost the same, might be like 5 milliseconds higher or so, but you can't really notice that. In terms of responsiveness, it still feels pretty similar. Around here, up to 50-ish milliseconds, so that's exactly what we saw previously. Is Jack here again? I think, yes, he is. Hello, Jack. Buddy, how's it going? I'm so sorry I haven't visited you in a while. I've been busy with the Battlefield beta, you know, but it's good to see you, as usual. But let's drop down here. Yeah, around the vegetation, you can also see quite a lot of weirdness artifacting around the car. But it's also a little bit minor. We haven't seen Bob, though. We need to kill that bastard. Come over here, Bob. Goodbye, Bob. There we go. Hey. All right, now we're talking. Okay, so now that we've killed Bob, we saw Jack. I think that's it for the frame generation 2 times testing here. It's also the latest version of frame generation, since the frame time graph is all weird like that. But we can see the 1% lows anyways with the Nvidia overlay there, which is nice. If I was counting the 1% lows with MSI Afterburner, you can see it says 46 there, but those are incorrect. So 1% lows of 100 or around 100 from the Nvidia overlay here. There we go, we're fine. Those are the correct ones, and it indeed feels extremely smooth. In terms of the VRAM allocation, by the way, it's allocating 8.5 gigabytes, and that is quite a lot, not gonna lie. But remember, we have all of the ray tracing features enabled, and the settings are all turned on and all maxed out aside from motion blur once again. So of course that will eat a lot of VRAM. It's not like GTA 5 Legacy, which is a 2015 title. It released in 2015 on PC at least, at 2013 on consoles. But yeah, since that's an older game, of course it will run fine even at 4K with max settings, aside from MSAA on a 6GB GPU. This one, however, with ray tracing is a different beast, and with frame generation, it's also consuming a little bit more VRAM than it would otherwise consume without the ray tracing being enabled. So let's stop it right there though, and let's try it out with 3 times frame generation next, shall we? Now the issue that I have with 3 times and 4 times with the baseline FPS of around 60 or 50 to 70 like we were seeing before is that we don't have enough real frames in between of the AI generated frames. So even though we're getting really high FPS now, 140s or 130s, and the game itself feels extremely smooth here on this 144Hz monitor that I'm utilizing, I can now see a lot of weirdness in the picture. I would prefer to play with 2 times frame generation instead, because that way you can see a lot less weirdness with the graphics and a lot less artifacting. Like, I'm not sure if it's gonna be picked up on YouTube, but if I do this, I can see a lot of artifacting around the car, around the finer edges as well, the mirrors, well, the mirror, and the windows. It has a lot of duplication there and ghosting, basically. Still works, but it has a lot more artifacting than previously. And the input latency, though, is still really good, though. So I can move the mouse around really fast like this, and I don't really feel a lot of input lag, which is great. And I feel like this is perfectly adequate still in terms of input lag numbers for a game like GTA 5. So I can't really complain about that. They've done a really good job with the latency in this one. There are games out there like Alan Wake 2, for example, where you enable frame generation, it introduces like 20 or 30 milliseconds of latency and it's instantly noticeable. I feel like in this one, a lot of people won't even notice the added input lag. It's only about like 5 milliseconds after all. 5 to 10 maybe at maximum. So that's really good for frame generation input lag. But again, the quality of the frames is a little bit lackluster. But hey, I have been trained, we gotta remind ourselves of this. I have been trained hard. Hello, Jack. How's it going? To notice these imperfections in the pictures, to notice the input lags as well. The average Joe probably won't even notice the artifacting. So I guess it's okay if you want to play like this still. And the input lags are fine once again, so there's no need to have a higher baseline FPS yet. Alright? Yeah, it's quite decent in terms of the playability, but the artifacting is definitely getting to me now. 4 times frame generation finally. Let's see, this is the maximum FG number here. And this way, again, I'm not sure if you guys can tell. You know what? I think I'm going to slow down the footage a little bit. But this is getting a little bit too dark. So I'm going to do that back in our house where we started. It's a bright sunny day. Yeah, here we go. Ooh, okay. So if I slow down this footage, we're not even driving the car around really fast, you know, and moving really fast. I'm just moving the mouse. And you can see around Michael and around the tree as well, there is a lot of artifacting here with 4 times FG. The latency, though, is pretty decent still. I don't really have any issue whatsoever with the latency. I feel like that's really impressive, actually. Maybe it's because of reflex being turned on plus boost, you know? But this is really good. Yeah, it's buttery smooth, of course. I can't really see more than 144 Hz right now with this monitor, but yeah, if you had like a 240 Hz monitor, for example, it would be absolutely buttery smooth. So in terms of FPS, it's awesome. You can see the ghosting behind the car now on the left side. It's really noticeable. There are like 3 lines there. Yeah. So FPS-wise, it's really high. It's really perfect, basically. input lag wise, for what we're seeing, it's pretty impressive, but in terms of the artifacting, it's way too much right now. I think the average Joe will notice this. Maybe they won't with 3 times, but with 4 times, I find it hard that someone won't notice those artifacts. Hi Jack, again, how's it beautiful? Well, you're always beautiful, of course. Alright, let's see if Bob is in his usual place this time around, down here. Over here, dropping down into the 120s, 130s. No, Bobby's not here. Latency is going up to like 70 milliseconds or close to it. So whenever that happens, you can definitely feel the input lag. But for a game like GTA, again, it's fine completely. And in terms of the noise on those reflections, yeah, it's a little bit more emphasized now than it was with like 2 times frame generation, but it still looks super similar. But that's it, guys. For this to be a better experience with 4 times frame generation, we will need to utilize some DLSS. We need to increase that baseline FPS, you know? So first of all, I'm just gonna turn off the frame generator here, and we're getting 65 frames per second at native resolution. I also bumped up the sharpness a lot in this one, you can probably tell. But that's so the frame generation doesn't wreck it, because sometimes frame gen, and in most games frame gen, will soften the image by quite a bit. But anyway, we're getting 60 FPS. Flat, 61 right there. 55 milliseconds latency. And this is with the reflex on with boost, alright? Let's check this out now with quality DLSS. So this is now going to render the game at 960p and upscale it to 1440p. Still looking fantastic. I mean, those reflections are maybe a little bit softer, but it also got away with the noise that we were seeing on the reflections. Wow. And we went from 60 or 61 FPS to 90 FPS. So that's a massive improvement in baseline FPS here, while making the game look a little bit lower resolution, but in reality, yeah, I can see a little bit more shimmering here and there, especially on the lines on the roads, you know, far away into the distance. But aside from that, it looks pretty perfect in my opinion. And I feel like they also fixed the issue with the license plates, because it's not ghosting anymore. I'm not really seeing any ghosting whatsoever at the moment, so that's really good. In terms of latency, it also went down, of course. It's more responsive because we're getting real FPS here, not the AI-generated FPS, which are also, I guess, real FPS, because all of the FPS are generated by your PC. So what is real? What isn't real? Who knows? I'm gonna stop it there, though, and let's enable 2 times frame generation now. So we bumped things from 100 FPS in this scene right here to 140 FPS. And where did the latency monitoring go? There we go, where it's back here. Okay, so sometimes that just disappears for some reason. It's really weird. I can instantly tell a little bit of artifacting once again around the car. Like, that is so noticeable. It's... especially, look at the mirrors. Wait, look at the mirrors whenever those appear on screen, like from over here. Yeah, look at that. The mirrors definitely have a trail there, so that's not good looking. But it's also kind of nitpicking. So would I rather play with 90 to 100 FPS with quality DLSS without frame generation, or with frame generation with 144 FPS now? Because this is really good now. This is really smooth for a high refresh rate monitor. I think if the frame generation quality was a little bit better in this game, I would be fine with enabling it on 2 times and having that faster, higher refresh rate experience here, because it's definitely looking a lot smoother now, and in terms of input lag, it's pretty much the same, mid-30s on the latency there, the monitoring, so not a problem in that regard. It's just that, again, it has quite a bit of artifacting, so not an amazing implementation once again, but it is there. I have asked for frame generation to be implemented in the game, so I like to see it. and I believe Rockstar will probably make it look better in future updates and tweak things a little bit, you know, because they've done so with DLSS, which wasn't really that great previously, and now it's pretty damn good. It's DLSS 4 already. They've done that with the reflections, and I complained about all of these things, by the way, on video. The reflections were really low quality previously. They would only look good at like 4K native resolution, and now they look good even at 1080p. But hey, in terms of performance, definitely good. In terms of input lag, it's really impressive. It's one of the best games in terms of input lag with frame generation that I've seen so far. So props to them for doing that. Let's try it with 3 times frame generation now. And since the baseline FPS were higher, obviously, before we enabled frame generation, they were at 90 to 100 FPS, the frame generation results this time around, visually speaking, they're closer to the 2 times frame generation than to the 4 times frame generation previously, or the 3 times frame generation previously as well. So that means that, yeah, you will notice a bit of artifacting here and there, but it's not as bad as it was before with the baseline of 60 to 70 frames per second. If I get out of the car, yeah, around Michael, it's super noticeable though. I think that would distract me quite a bit, so I wouldn't do this, but again, everyone is different. I feel like a lot of people will be fine with this, but still, Rockstar, please, 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 make the visuals of frame generation be better in this title, because if you can fix that, it will be an awesome experience. There are games out there where you can't even tell the difference in terms of artifacting, comparing no frame gen to frame gen on. So it works pretty well. Even the vegetation still looks really good. It's just that moving things, especially fast moving things, get wrecked a little bit with the frame generation 3 times here, or 2 times, or 4 times, no matter what times. I'm kind of curious to see FSR-FG as well, though. But maybe that's going to be for another video with an AMD GPU, FSR4 plus frame generation. That should be good to see, right? Here we are with 4 times frame generation. Input lags are still really good, as they were even with a baseline of 60 FPS, so of course now with a baseline of 100 FPS, it's even smoother. And now we're up to 230s, 240s. That is also really damn smooth. Like, for 240 Hz monitors, I think this is worth utilizing at least for 10 minutes for you to be able to see 240 Hz, you know, because it's marvelous, my friends. It is a beauty to behold, those super high refresh rates. So again, if you're not looking for those artifacts, it will look really good and it will feel amazing. And still responsive as well, which is awesome to see. But if you are someone that is sensitive to artifacting and you can notice those things very easily, just disable it, because even the quality DLSS experience without any frame generation whatsoever was really good. So this is basically a frame smoothing technique. It doesn't really improve your performance, you know, but I would still rather play with 2 times FG over DLAA and maximum settings here with 100 FPS instead of 50 to 70. But I would not rather play at 200 FPS compared to 90 FPS with quality DLSS and maximum settings. So there's that. I think that's been it for this one, my friends. Thanks very much for watching. I'm also not noticing as much artifacting as we saw previously, at least while driving. But outside of the car, moving the camera around, there is quite a lot of it once again. I'm gonna slow down this footage so you guys can see it, in case YouTube compression just wrecks it all, you know, as it usually does. But yeah, that's been it for this one, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Love you all. Bye-bye.